Okay.
Okay. Morning, I'd like to call the Personnel Committee meeting of the Washington County Board of Supervisors on this day of June 12th, 2025 to order, please. First thing on our agenda is call to order. We've got that done. Now we're gonna accept the minutes from the May 16th, 2025. Do you have a motion? Motion. Gail. Jim. Is there any discussion? All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed? Carried. Now we're gonna move on to Stefan and Danielle.
So our backfill request for this month, IT has an IT service manager that vacated on May 16th due to resignation. Probation had a probation officer trainee vacate on June 30th due to a resignation. Or actually vacating. Public health had a preschool service coordinator vacate on May 23rd due to a resignation. Social services had a caseworker vacate May 22nd due to resignation. Social services examiner vacated May 30th due to resignation. And they had two clerks vacate out of social services due to resignation, but staying with the county in another position. The other one left.
Any question on those? I have a question.
Resignations, are they generally to take another job?
Generally, yes. Or exit.
Other counties?
It's been all over, actually. A pay was a concern. Yeah, so pay. Just social services is hard, I think, for some, and they just want to go in a different direction with their careers, it looks like.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hey, what else? All right, we'll move on to staffing pattern title by grade exempt schedules.
So the sheriff was, actually this move for public safety, the special patrol officers' salaries are all set to go to be, effective July 1st. So we just need approval to add those salaries to the non-union hourly title by grade schedule.
So moved. Second. Dave, seconded by Charlie and Daryl. Is there any discussion? Yes, Dan.
Interesting. How did they arrive at the numbers? Is this something that the school just set and all we basically do is adopt?
Yes.
Okay.
They negotiated with the school, and that's what they.
Well, who negotiates?
The sheriff. The
Sheriff.
Sheriff does? Okay.
And so we have motion needed for discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. We don't need to move to the finance, right? You just go ahead.
Yeah, there's something else on
Yeah,
finance
that's
already
good
for
for
it.
you.
Okay, so now finance, right? Okay. About that, doing that other business. Handbook edition emergency response.
So on the back of your sheet is the draft, for the emergency response leave, with pay for volunteer firefighters. So we didn't have a policy in place for this, so we wanted to just get it in the handbook. And hoping you had a chance to review, and if you had any questions on it, you can let me know.
Looking for one thing, sorry.
The location piece.
No. No, what kind of proof are we requesting for a response? Is there any documentation?
We didn't ask for proof, so to speak.
Well, there's gotta be.
It's,
I presume there'd be a 911 call.
I was gonna say there's
Right.
gotta be, so, but that might wanna be in here.
or we could add that, the firefighter brings something from their chief.
No, it has to go through 911.
Would it?
If it, any call goes through 911,
But
so.
that doesn't know who's responding. The chief,
Yeah.
we sign in every call where
Chief
you get,
knows.
you decide your law.
Right, but I would still put them in charge, like from the call and figuring out from the chief. I think that's how it should go.
Who does that?
Dispatch.
Uh,
Get the individual's
Well, because we also were in charge of the fire coordinator and everything,
Yeah.
so we could handle every facet of that if we wanted to.
Yeah, you don't know the mutual aids, all the mutual aids set up, so you might be a mutual aid call in to go sit at somebody else's or sit at the firehouse waiting to cover somebody else who's out on another call. So normally, or what I've seen is that, the employee brings back a letter from the fire chief stating that they responded to the call and you at least have some documentation. If you want to go further with the fire coordinator and the 911 center, that's fine.
911 can verify that the fire.
That there was at least a call.
Yeah, they won't know who was that.
Right.
Really probably should have a letter or something.
I just to reiterate what Daryl's pointing out, that's, there was an incident in the village of Greenwich where, an active DPW was actually arrested for, using too many hours, going to fires when he either didn't or was a mutual aid. So this can be a serious problem.
Yeah, so you can prevent it by just putting the language in there.
Yeah. I think the last line says it's not from mutual aid, even active fire. That'll curtail some of it.
Yeah, that's fine, but still gotta
Yeah,
bring
the
a,
fire chief.
still gotta bring a letter in saying that they.
We can add a line and bring it back next month.
Sure.
It's a good
Yeah.
idea.
Yep.
The last one, which you just mentioned, it says mutual aid for standby is not considered an active fire. But most mutual aid, they'll call 4 or 5, if it's house fire, I think they have a policy where they call 4 or 5 different departments for mutual aid. Now, you respond to it, and you don't know whether you're gonna go to the fire or you're gonna be at standby at a firehouse. So I don't know how you could make, I'm not trying to regulate this as so much as I'm thinking that this could really, we're putting so much on this, we're just money in the water. And I don't know what's the right approach to it. But the other thing is what if they got called mutual aid before your shift started, an hour before your shift started, so you responded mutual aid. You're the fire department now is stationed you and your truck at another firehouse. Now, you can't leave because you're manning that firehouse and that fire truck, yet you just violated the last paragraph.
Well, it doesn't say you violated, it simply says that, I think you're gonna have to use your benefit time
Right.
to cover it. It's not saying,
Well, what it says, the employee must obtain approval. How do you get that approval after the fact? Why do you?
I mean, Jay's got the answer.
Okay.
he hasn't reported to work.
So I talked to a couple of guys that are in this situation. There's not a lot in the county, but they didn't feel that they needed to run to a mutual aid and sit there and do nothing when they had a job going, but they certainly wanted to be able to get to a serious traffic accident or a fire if it was in their area and, on their fire department. That was their concern, to be able to do that. They don't want to go and stay in direct traffic for a standby and a simple accident anymore. They're doing that already on the job, so.
And just so you know, in the private sector, selling farm supply, if there's something active like that, that place empties. And they pay them for being gone. So it's not like this is out of the realm. And I don't know how the paper mill works, if they allow them to go or.
We do that. Well, our policy is they gotta bring a letter back and they also have to request permission to leave too.
And that's what's in here.
Yeah, so they, if they're critically involved in a process at that point in time, they may not be able to let them go.
Okay, so Danielle will bring this back next month?
Then I just withdraw my motion.
Yes.
Jim needs to withdraw a second.
You need to withdraw something to it. Yes. Okay, withdrawn. Go.
But thank you for bringing the policy forward. I think this is needed.
Especially with the lack of volunteers.
Wait, how did all these years go unaddressed?
I know.
You know what I mean? It just, We have a lot of policies like that. I'm not pointing fingers at anybody. I'm just saying that all of a sudden these things come up and we realize we haven't done anything for years.
And you don't wanna penalize the employee for
Right, exactly.
doing the right thing and being a volunteer on emergency response.
Absolutely.
They usually add is when somebody asks for forgiveness instead of permission, and we can't unknow. That's how these are usually treated.
Yeah.
Okay, now we're on to the Commissioner of Social Services discussion.
So we've received several resumes and applications for the position, and we want to move forward with interviewing. So we did pick a few dates, and I checked with Debbie on if they're okay with the classroom and the board. So we were looking at July 8th, 9th, and 10th for the initial, and then I did put July 15th as like an alternate date in case, we wanted second interviews or something like that, so. But really, the initials would be those 3 days.
And how many people are we interviewing?
We actually have 11 candidates
So probably for a day,
for a
thinking
day.
it's gonna be a pretty full day.
Yeah,
Okay. 2 in the morning.
we're looking at like an hour and a half each interview with a lunch break for at least the first
So
2
there'll be
days.
2.
Two break and then 2. We will be sending out all of the information to your emails so you can review ahead of time. We'll prepare some questions also and have you review them.
And that's usually a personnel and health and human service combined joint committee for interviews.
That should work out well. Charlie's put this through about doing this. So we appreciate that.
And he'll be all rejuvenated when he gets back from Scotland. So.
Okay, does anyone have any
Should
questions?
be wearing a kilt.
That discussion.
Yeah,
We're gonna try to do the,
not gonna wear the camp. though.
those are in the same department, those are Charlie's, the same department. Or the same time frame. Yes. Okay, good. Okay, personnel officer reappointment. Term 7/15/25.
So my term ends July 15th and I wanted to ask for reappointment or a 6-year term.
Motion, Dave.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
He's done a great job.
You're up.
Second.
Brian. Shaking your head. All right. Any discussion? All in favor aye? Opposed? Carried. Does anyone have anything else you'd like to bring before the personnel committee at this point in time? Seeing none? We're adjourned. Thank you.
Charlie, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Okay, we're gonna start with the county attorney.
Okay, the first one is, everyone knows, I passed around, there was a notice from the Court of Appeals looking for anyone who wishes to file an amicus brief on the even year election law issue. I passed around both the initial trial decision as well as the appellate decision. As you know, the Onondaga Supreme Court initially held the law to be unconstitutional. The Fourth Department reversed that and said it was constitutional. It is now going on to the Court of Appeals. Oral argument will be September 8th. I'm going to anticipate they're going to issue a decision for the election so that everybody knows that they have to run again next year. The only expense other than time that my office would put into it is $45 filing fee. I'm a friend of the court briefs. Basically, they accept the motion, they file your brief, you're done. You don't get the opportunity to do oral argument on it. I think I have an idea how most of the board feels, but I wanted to give everybody a chance to think about it, decide what we want to do, and knowing the current makeup of the court, do I think there's a great deal chance of success? Not really, but it's a question of whether we want to go on the record, say it or not. So I wanted to give the board time to reflect on it, determine if that's something they wish me to do. If they do, that's fine. If they don't, that's fine.
I for one would like to be on the record.
Same.
Anybody that doesn't want to be on the record,
For 45 months.
you got your answer?
I'm not running again.
I'll do a resolution like I did with the Oneida County one to authorize it.
Thanks.
Okay, the second one is sale of county owned property in the town of Fort Ann. Ms. Last is here representing her client. Just to give some background, she can fill in on any mistakes I made. There's a small strip of county owned property on basically I'd call it probably the corner of Berquist Road and Tripoli Road. County owns it from years ago to do work on a culvert that runs under Tripoli. There's currently a matter before the Fort Ann planning board for a subdivision. Basically what the owner of the property wants to do is have the ability to bid on that strip, which butts what he currently owns. I spoke with Deb Donahue. She indicated that there is not a need for the county to own this particular strip of property. So what the process would be if the finance committee wants to refer to the board is the board has to declare that it's no longer useful to the county or necessary for public use by a 2/3 roll call vote. Presuming the board does that, then it's put out to bid. As I told Kara, as long as her client hasn't ticked off any of his neighbors, it probably shouldn't be that big of an issue. It has been surveyed. I believe it's currently marked, so there's not going to be any confusion with the sale if we go that far as to what the property specifically is. They're not bidding on a very nice house and large piece of property. So I want to make sure that Bert was aware that I sent that around as well. If there were any questions, I did this last, or I could try to answer.
Does this work just like the tax sale and it comes back here again?
No, well,
So the acceptance of the sale will go to the board for acceptance, absolutely.
So it will come right back.
Right.
And there's no reason for us to keep a right of way to actually work on that culvert again?
based on what Deb has told me now. And we could always take advantage of the meeting. And we'll call back Mr. Half specifically.
Funny how I said that.
You might have said it, Dan. What's the process to sell it?
It's a competitive bid.
So in other words, it'll be auctioned off at
It won't be auctioned off at the county auction. What happens is
okay.
we put a bid together, bids come in, we decide what to accept.
Is it a buildable lot or non-buildable lot?
As you can see up there, basically, I'll try to point it out as best as I can. It's just. You kind of see the pink, it's only this one little strip right here at the very edge of the property. It's not anything you can build anything on that little strip. It's kind of hard to see, we'll try to blow it up basically from here to here, so it just kind of runs along the edge of the property.
Well, it makes sense that the adjoining property owner can be very interested. I'm just curious how wide it was, whether it was built on.
Not on that one particular
Buildable.
strip,
No, and the topography of it is
extremely steep.
deep.
So Kara, what's the? Having said all of that, being steep and all that, so what's he plan on using it for? Just have
He's
doggies?
before the planning board in the town
Yep.
for subdivision approval. The subdivision, is ready to be approved, subject to, there was some questions that, Jeff Meyer had regarding the survey, which is then what led us to realize that this particular property wasn't owned by our client. He thought he owned right up to the road, but after the survey work was done, so this will give him the additional acreage to build. But the topography is such that he thought he owned down, but he doesn't. Here's a copy of the survey. The yellow portion is the pink portion, if anybody wants to.
Yeah, I think
Take a
we
look.
sent it around earlier, I think.
Yeah, so that's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Oh, without the property, it's not big enough to subdivide.
That's what I'm understanding.
Yeah.
No, it's big enough to subdivide. I think what he's looking for is that the way he can build with this, he needs this additional acreage because of the topography on the balance of the lot.
This is key to giving them.
That's within the APA also, right?
I believe so, but I don't know.
South of 149.
Yeah.
South of 149, I don't think it is. Well, actually, maybe.
Yeah, try to avoid them. They're gonna need the part of the distance for them.
But I
Right.
guess,
So the town, it's my understanding, the town was ready to approve the subdivision, subject to us, subject to him getting an opinion that that pink area was in fact owned by him, and then it was determined. No, because he's gotta come in on the other side of the river.
It's up on the,
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to move this, to the full board. As a
Second.
fail. And then for discussion, I mean, the only discussion point I have is what good is it to the county? If we don't need it for if we don't need it to service the culvert, then why not return it to landowner? Make it some taxable acreage.
It benefits the town and it's same with Gartrell.
Exactly.
Dan, will we use the county's option here, or what's the process you have envisioned for the?
I had reached out to Barb. I know we've done something similar in the past.
The Granville property, I think is the one that I'm thinking of, that we did it differently than the online.
Yeah, I think it's the way we're doing it.
Oh, thank you.
We had a motion in a second, am I right?
Yes, sir.
Last question is, what's the acreage on this?
It was around one, less than one.
I think it's gotta be let, you see if there's anything in this description, it's, when the county,
It's almost 400 feet long.
yeah, when the county acquired it in 1954, it was estimated to be 1.38 acres.
Okay, well, I mean, with this survey here, then you have an actual acreage amount somewhere, somebody has it because.
Yeah, I don't know that if it's been calculated based on the new survey that for that particular parcel, but, we will rate,
Punch
if-
it, you got this.
if our client is the successful bidder, then we'll make arrangements with the surveyor to have a description prepared based on the survey. Survey that is submitted. But the deed into the county is 1.38.
Okay, thank you.
Here, I just get one more question. So if in essence, he's not the successful bidder, this project's not gonna go forward.
No.
So I said, I hope he hasn't ticked off any of his neighbors.
So, I was talking to Matt
Were
a
you going
little
over
bit.
the bid?
Here, the reason is that this gives him additional, the requisite road frontage.
Yes.
For the town, for the planning board.
Okay.
Yeah, so he's aware, he's gotta,
Do the rock and a hard place.
yeah.
Well, it's Rocky Way, so it's on the town.
At least you put it on Zoom for him to help him. Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Gary.
Okay, and last but not least, we have, Matt Fuller here, I believe, Mayor. Mayor, Whitehall with regard to,
Thanks, Ken.
property at 1 North William Street in the village of Whitehall. There's been a, property that's been run down, it just about collapsed. It did collapse. It is, very likely could be on the, list for tax foreclosure, as there's numerous unpaid taxes on the property pretty much since the current property owner purchased it. The Village of Whitehall is applying for a grant that would allow them to help clean it up, but they have to establish ownership thereof. And there was some question of whether we would withhold tax enforcement during the period of time that they're cleaning up. And I believe the treasurer has recommendation with regard to any action in that regard.
So and this is completely my opinion, the easy button for all parties, the county, the village, the property owner. With a property like this, if there was no inquiry from an outside body, right? So let's start there. If this property was just another property headed for tax sale, it would be my recommendation to the board for us to not take it as a potential liability to the community, because we don't do cleanups, we don't get into asbestos remediation and all that, right? So we tend to not take those. We 1138 them and get them off the roll until such time as they're either cleaned up or there's a transition that makes them desirable again, right? So if there were no outside inquiry, my recommendation to the board would be to 1138. I think that in this situation, and I hope that it makes sense to everybody involved, it would still be my recommendation. So if the county was to 1138 the property, what that does in fact is it will take the property off the rolls. The current taxes are liquidated, right? They're written off, charged back to the respective taxing jurisdictions. Because what we want to do is we want to stop the bleeding. We don't want bills to continue to accrue on a property that we're not going to take, right? Because the liability of taking it far exceeds the benefit of it being on the roll and selling it at an auction. So that would be my normal recommendation to you all would be to 1138 the property as a liability and charge back the jurisdictions. What I think that opens up for the village is the ability for them to work with a property owner who may be willing, I can't speak for him, but he might be willing to just, be done with the property. He could sell it to the village for $1. The village would then have a property that has no delinquent taxes on it. And they now have site control to apply for their grant. So I'm hoping that my normal recommendation still offers relief to all of the parties involved. I think that the linchpin in this one that I would need your agreement and cooperation on is part of 1138 a property, as I said, was the charge back to the taxing jurisdictions that we've already made whole. I think so as to not to hurt the village, an agreement could be struck, much like the one that we did where Market 32 currently stands. So Supervisor Superdot and I worked together for quite a while and came up with a, kind of an ingenious plan where when we would transition the property to the town upon sale to a developer, if there was any surplus above the cleanup costs, they would then make the taxes whole for what the county was owed. I think that an agreement like that with the village this time might be prudent. So what you could do is you could hold the chargeback in abeyance until such time as the property is cleaned up, remediated, and ready for resale. Then if the village was to gain any surplus above the cleanup costs, they could then make whole their chargeback costs. So I think that my ask, so there would be, the ask on this property would be twofold, and then we'll let the village tell you if I'm all wet or not. My ask would be number one would be to 1138 the property, which would be our normal course of action on this type of property. My second ask would be to, in that 1138 resolution, to also put the same language in that we had for the town of Fort Edward and the Market 32 property, that would make us whole if there was any surplus money at the time of transitioning the property. So that would kind of be my two asks to the board. But until you hear from Mr. Fuller, the mayor, I don't know if that's anything that they're even willing to entertain. So,
And one caveat, Fort Edward had no money to be spent.
no, the cleanup costs ate up all of the funds.
And more than likely could here too.
But honestly, it might be the best $8,000 this county
Right,
ever spent.
Right.
And I would argue that all day
That's
long.
why
That that project, you can't argue, didn't work out for the community.
And so what you're saying is there's precedent. And
We have done this before and successfully, I would argue.
that would be the same thing we're looking for.
And I don't think there's gonna be a market 32 on this property, but again, if it's cleaned up and back on the rolls and reused, that's still a win.
Costco,
It is a win. If we can get it.
did you want to say
Get it turned around.
Oh,
something?
Sure. Everybody, Matt Fuller, from the village, I'm up to the mayor here too. So how this thing came about is, last year, year before. Property was in the process of actually falling down. I know it was like around 4th of July, because I was going there on Saturday. And the board declared an emergency, and the DPW actually knocked it down. We were there with the engineers, you could hear glass, the shards from breaking windows as the building was collapsing in on itself. So the village brought it down and left it there. Since then, New York City Office of Community Renewal has come out with their community development block grant for property cleanup. We actually just got 2 in Fort Edward, one for 50 Easton, one for a property on Canal Street. That we're out to bid right now, to get that cleanup of this same grant. And we've got preliminary indication from OCR, that this property also qualifies. So what we did is we entered into an option agreement with the property owner. And if we apply for the grant, and if we're successful in that, if we're successful in striking a deal with the county here, that the property owner will feed the village the property for $1. Or paying anything, no consideration, right? And under that grant program, there are 2 requirements really, a couple of requirements, but the 2 big ones for us are, if we were gonna sell the property that Dale was talking about, there's a 5-year look back. So over 5 years, the grant can be recaptured if we sell it for a non-grant qualified purpose. What we can do is, sell it for a grant qualified purpose, which is low income housing. You know, if a family came in and if there was a proposal to sell it to them for, less than market value for low income housing or something. Or there was like a Hudson Headwaters, a health benefit, you don't have to repay the grant. So the village has already incurred the cost of bringing the building down and applying for the grant. And obviously not having the money also to pay back tax to, all taxes. I think what Al has talked about is something we kind of didn't envision, hoping that the board of supervisors would do just that. Pull it on the tax roll, stop the moving. We knew you weren't gonna foreclose on it because of the status of it. We will get the grant, clean it up, and either wait out the look back period, or there's again, low income family or something comes along and wants to do a project there. We also may be able to get further OCR funds to actually build it. So that, there's some benefit to doing this grant in terms of further redevelopment of the property, the exit.
It's right, but there's no on-street parking. It's right on, it's across from the canal, so there's a lot of homes there that don't have a place to park. And so they normally park on the street, but snow removal, you can get them out there, that would be a place for them to.
If the board is, if that's something you're willing to entertain, but I was if we can make that work. And we did, just like a week or 2 ago, hear from OCR that honestly, I think we're waiting just word of the approval. I think we're gonna be in good shape to get it.
Yeah, is the village a pro housing community? Are you registered as a pro housing community?
We are,
Very good.
that was part of the getting these grants.
Yeah, that'll, box gotta be checked on here. And move
A second.
it. Any discussion?
I think this is a valuable start to many blighted buildings in Washington County. They're sitting there not doing a darn thing for anybody. And You know, it's not, we're not getting taxes, we're not getting school taxes, there's no economic ability to move your towns forward. So Al, and thank you for doing this. I think it's the start of many. I'd like to see Shushan Deadwood do the same thing. It's falling down. Okay, I don't know if the county's been out there, but it's collapsing.
So the difference here, Supervisor, and I would love to help you with Shushan Bentwood. The difference here is they're able to make an agreement with the owner.
Right.
So I'm limited so if I do take the property, I'm extremely limited now under the current law on what I do with the property. What's beautiful in this situation is I can walk away from it. They can deal with the owner and that doesn't fall under any of that new real property stuff. The nightmare you have is we already own them. So,
And I should note too, there actually were two. We have two of these properties that we applied for and one to Al's point. We couldn't work a deal with the property owner wanted to get paid for the property. Won't be a huge secret which one it is. It's a burned down property in
The other one.
Broadway and
Yeah.
Whitehall. And the property owner wanted to get paid. I said, if we go to the board of supervisors and tell them, we want you to relieve the taxes, and oh, by the way, we had to pay the property owner $3, $4, $5 grand, the county's gonna say, no, we want that money. We're not gonna let you pay the property owner and then let this property go for no taxes. Even the village would be like, no, we're not eating your taxes and then giving you money for this. So, if a community is OCR qualified, this was the first year of that grant program. It was somewhat well publicized, but, it did not get used. So the monies are still there and hopefully, you know, if it doesn't get used, they won't keep renewing it. Hopefully people keep in line because it's, like I said, we get 2 to 4, then they'll be back on the tax rolls. And that's what I do.
So Al, you're gonna help write this resolution, so it's got all the elements in it.
yeah, I'll actually try to get something to Deb today so they can go out in the packet. You can see it. It'll be our standard 1138 resolution, but it'll have one additional resolved in there. It'll look a lot like the deal that we struck with Fort Edward.
Yep.
That, you know, there's language in there that Roger and I helped draft back in the day about what happens should the property be, you know, sold with surplus. And I don't remember the dollar amount off the top of my head, but it's considerably less than the Fort Edward property was. The taxes on it aren't astronomical. They get to begin with.
I think it was somewhere around 15,000.
Pardon?
I think it was somewhere around between 13 and 15,000.
Yeah, I was thinking 15 to 18, so it's somewhere, and the village's portion of that obviously would only be a piece of that, so.
My question is, when they make the deal with the property owner to sell it for $1, does that forgive us on any of the tax stuff? When the sale comes later, or does that need special language with their deal with the property owner?
So as far as we're concerned, we're gonna 1138 it from the roll. What they do deed and ownership wise has nothing to do with us,
Okay,
thankfully.
okay, that's what I was.
We're gonna deal with the taxation part of it, and whatever they do with the owner is completely between them. We don't care about ownership in that.
Yeah, I ultimately have to sign a title certificate to OCR, and I can't sign that knowing there's a tax thing. So I need, however we get it done, we couldn't take title.
Okay, so it's with the action of the board today, it will be on the floor next Friday.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
So this might be the longest the county attorney has ever taken up a finance meeting.
I could take one more, but I'll.
Okay, Brendan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck in Whitehall.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I'm gonna make you happy for a second time today. You're only gonna hear from me for about 30 seconds, and I'm gonna shut up. Because most of the financials, you're gonna hear from me plenty in 2 weeks from now. So, I think July 1st-ish.
July 1st in the afternoon.
Is the date that we finally struck to go over the, you know, where we ended 2024 and kind of how 2025 is looking. So there's no sense spending a significant amount of time today when you're gonna hear it all over again in a couple of weeks. What I'm gonna do this year, and I hope it's more meaningful to you. While I've been treasurer, I prepare these PowerPoints and we put them up on the screen and we go through the slides, and about 15 minutes in, it's just a random bunch of numbers and I don't know that you get a benefit from it. So this year's packet is gonna be a very small handout. It'll be a one pager for each of the funds. And what I envision is this year's financial report to be more interactive and conversation. So what I don't want is what I've given you for, 12 years now. Of just me regurgitating numbers and you go and you saying, thank you. I actually want to talk about the funds, talk about how they work, and then have a conversation. We have 4 new faces on the board. Let's talk about how carpool works. Let's talk about how county road machinery works. Talk about how we changed the rates. Has it helped? Has it not? So I really hope that this year's financial report is less of a report and more of a seminar. And we have an interaction that is more meaningful to you, right? I can spit facts out to you all day long. What you take from them, you all have different levels of. If we have a conversation, and what's beautiful about the conversation, a supervisor might ask a question that you were either afraid to ask or you don't know what you don't know, right? Supervisor Shaw is fantastically, historically asking questions that he already knows the answer to, but it sparks conversation. That's what I would like on July 1st. Those questions, you'll see somebody else at the table go, aha, right? So that interaction, I hope, is more beneficial to you. And if it works, we'll continue that. If you want to go back to the boring PowerPoints, we can do that too. But I think that the interaction is going to be much more meaningful to you as an oversight board than any PowerPoint I could ever put together. So that's good news number 1. Good news number 2 is while the budget officer may have seemed cynical to me in the first quarter of this year, he may have been right. So we had 4 negative sales tax deposits in a row. I started to go into a little bit of a panic attack and warn you that this might be our new norm. I no sooner got those words out of my mouth, and the next 4 deposits were over last year. One of them was over by $418,000. So to date, we're $916,000 over the same time last year. What the budget officer was concerned with is if you look at when those negative numbers happened, it was at the end of the state's fiscal year. So while we can't prove anything, it does make you a little suspicious about the timing of them. Because all of a sudden, life was good after 4 deposits of not so good. So you gotta wonder if there is some kind of holdback at the state and then is trued up eventually, once their books are rosy and sunshiny. Again, I'm not making accusations. I don't have anything to prove. However, the timing is a little suspicious. The good news is we're up $960,000. What makes me even more excited about that is if that is our new norm, they just started collecting in March the 7% sales tax on the short-term rentals. So we're going to start seeing an influx of our 3% of that, and towards the end of this month and beginning of next, we'll start seeing those deposits cycling through our system. So if we're already, if we're still in a growth trend, and then you add the short-term rentals, it may be the one piece of good news that Brian and I had to share with you in the near future, because everything else, quite frankly, doesn't look well at all. Supervisor.
So with that, looking at your burn rates, anything concern you on the burn rates?
So starting next month, and I don't know if it was Brian or Supervisor Towle or both, and I mentioned this too. So back in the day, when I was just a lowly deputy county treasurer, I used to prepare cash flow statements. They were elementary, but they kind of showed on a monthly basis the cash in and the cash out. I think that with the financial times that we're in now, and my fund balance dropping to 13.2 million or whatever the number is, that's a yellow line level for me, bordering on a red line level. In order to help educate the board about the relationship between fund balance and my cash flow, it might be time to resurrect a cash flow statement as part of this packet every month. It might behoove you to be able to see, you know, January, February, March, April, what does the cash flows look like? And why is Al so panicked about $13 million in fund balance? That seems like a wonderful number. When you see what the actual cash in and cash out is monthly, I think it will be more useful to you. So I think I'm gonna resurrect that for future meetings. If you like it, fantastic. If you, and we can tweak it into something that works for you. But I provide you the cash balances now, and you can see that they're down like $5 million from last year. And I want to be able to share with you why that's important, because we get, you know, we get a lot of our cash influx in the beginning of the year, and then you're sucking it dry.
Right.
And unlike the towns who start getting made whole in January, we don't start getting any influx until mid to late February, and truly not until April do we get our, you know, our good influx of cash. So we have to make it through the first quarter of the year at the county, cash flow wise. So I think that sharing that with you might be helpful. And because you're so used to me whining and moaning about fund balance, I'd rather not whine anymore and actually educate you on why I whine. And hopefully that's a better benefit. Because after a while, I become the guy who cried wolf, right? And Al, you know, Al's always gonna complain about fund balance. Well, you're right. But I'd like to show you why I complain about fund balance. And
It was actually half what it was 2 years ago.
we were at 22 not that long ago.
Well, it actually hit 27. We moved everything, so we were at 20.
And but I will say, and I'll give the board a lot of credit. On the 2 years that we had decent surpluses, you invested that money into the capital projects, and we're paying cash for both Middle Falls and 40 and Barnes.
Yep.
So I do want to recognize that looking back, you couldn't have made a better decision at that time. So thank you for that, because we didn't have to borrow, which is saving the taxpayers money at a time where we're gonna have to deliver some bad news. So thank you for that investment in capital when we could.
Is there any word on, when we might see the, CHPE?
My gut's telling me 27, but I don't have any facts to support that. These two might be better educated.
Yeah,
It's, you probably see your first payment, 6 months after June 26th, which is 27.
yeah, that's what I thought.
And I've already asked the budget officer for this. I don't know when is appropriate to do it. But I've asked, to be able to, whether it's at a finance meeting or a whole separate workshop, I really, really, really want to discuss pilots and their effect on both your levy and your operation. And again, we're gonna have some more new faces in January, right? No matter what happens. So sometime in 2026, early 26, I hope, whether it's a finance meeting or a special workshop, we'll have Miranda come in, and between Miranda and I want to be able to help the board on what that looks like. Because while nobody likes to override the cap, the best fiscal decision you can make on a year where there's a substantial pilot is to override the cap. Because a new pilot affects your tax cap. So if you don't override the cap, you could accidentally bust your cap and then have to reserve that money. So it didn't really help you. If you override the cap and the messaging to your taxpayers is proper, you can show them how you overrode the cap, but you could in theory keep taxes flat. So even though you overrode the cap, doesn't mean you increased taxes. You might have to override the cap to accept the new money and keep the taxes flat or a minimal growth. Because we've learned that zeros don't always come back to haunt you, but you might be keeping it a 1 or a 2, right? but you would have to override the cap in order to accept the new money, because the new money is substantial enough that it will bust your cap. And if you have to reserve it, you didn't get the benefit of it anyway.
So is it part of the problem is you get that filed money in 1 year? It's gonna reduce tax rate substantially? Because.
If you don't override the cap, you would have to reduce taxes, and
So-
then you're in a whole other problem.
You may reduce your taxes by 20%. I'm just to have a number in my head. Next year, you may have to raise them by 23% to make that money back because your assessment levels will change.
Which is why I want to have the workshop so that, you know, the existing members remember and the new members maybe are hearing it for the first time.
Yep.
Because some of the towns that are receiving pilots have fairly private super payers. So let's get everybody educated on the same page, because I'm gonna be asking you and the budget officer to make those decisions in 26 for 27's budget.
Right.
So it wouldn't be fair to ask you to make those decisions without first educating you on why I'm gonna ask. Because overriding the cap is always one of those hot potatoes, right? I think if you message it right and people understand what it means. If you override the cap and their taxes don't go up, they'll get that, right? So the messaging is important. But the education, if I don't first educate you, you can't message properly. So I think there's a value there as well.
So our biggest concern there is gonna be. They're predominantly different reasons to override the cap. And the first one's gonna smack the taxpayer hard because we're in dire straits. So they're gonna get that one and say you're overriding the cap again. Well, the next one is to actually benefit you. The first one isn't really gonna benefit you. It's just what we have to do to keep up with the situation we're in.
And the timing is terrible, because we were hoping that 27 would be the first time I asked you to override the cap. Unfortunately, based on our current position,
Yeah.
you're gonna be asked this year as
Right.
well.
We don't have enough fund balance to.
We do
bridge the
not.
gap.
Correct.
That's the problem.
That was the point of my question.
Yeah, well, we thought we were there
Right,
2
Doc.
years ago.
But on the dock, on the boat.
Yeah.
It's going too fast.
I sort of was thinking that, first of all, if we have this workshop, should we invite the schools and the villages too? We're gonna be impacted. Be good for them to hear this too. I know a lot of the schools are itching to use their money, but, they might want to hear this too.
So the session that you have coming up that the county administrator arranged, I'm a big fan of that. And I think that you could probably do something like that again. So that it could be more inclusive, because again, we're gonna make decisions here at the county. That affect the towns, the villages, the schools. It seems like the school is always the one entity that's left out of our conversations. The towns get information from you all. And a lot of times by extension, so does the village, because a lot of you, some of you will even share office space, right? So the communication between the county, town and village is pretty good, because you are the towns, you are the county, right? You wear two hats. The redheaded stepchild tends to be the schools, whom we don't have good communication with. So it's a great opportunity. Thank you, Mr. O'Brien, for reminding me, but it is a great opportunity to include them in the fold.
And we do the assessments that the school works off of, so we usually get the ill will of whatever happens at the school.
Well, so the assessments come from the town and the
Yeah.
county lives with it, but again, I think that what the county administrator had done with the comptroller's seminar coming up in a couple of weeks, that platform could work fantastically for something like this as well.
We can work together and schedule something.
Yeah, that would be fantastic.
And it's very important, that meeting the 25th, I think, we'll all get a better idea of what we are supposed to be doing as a governing board. And they'll give you a lot more questions as they review that information. And at the same time, that's really why we went to July 25th to bring out our own county information.
July 1st.
Or July 1st, yeah, is because if you do that, you're gonna have a little better question and a little better idea of what we're talking about coming out of the June 25th.
We almost thought about doing them on the same day, and I think that would be an awful lot for you to absorb it for that. What's great about the presentation that you're gonna see is this guy comes completely with a fiscal mind and doesn't care about politics. He's going to tell you the correct fiscal decisions to make. And politics be damned. So I think it'll be refreshing to hear that slant on the conversation.
So how's their numbers coming in for that?
So, all right, they stole my thunder once again, because that was gonna be my other, so if I can just add to it, if I can.
I lied, yes.
If I can add to
Sorry,
it now
too
that I've
much,
had to
guys.
bore you with another later. Yeah, so we have the Office of New York State Comptroller, coming June 25th. You've all received the invitation. We're gonna send out a reminder. We have a little bit of room left for it. We sent the invitation to the towns, the villages. And of course, all the department heads, told them that's a mandatory department head, meeting that day, because it's just very valuable information. But if you could please let my office know as soon as possible, you can bring people from your towns that you think are very involved in the budget and that it would be helpful. But it is very valuable, and it's gonna be at the Sandy Hill Arts Center, and again, that's June 25th at 1 o'clock. Expected to be probably about an hour and a half. Or take, so yeah, if you could just let me know, so we know how many people to expect, that would help a lot.
And earlier in the day, we'll see you because Charlie Tall's holding the meeting earlier in the day and we know we don't want to miss it.
So, second thing is I was thinking about the timing of this meeting. As we look at the completion date, they've got a hard stop of getting this done by May 31st, CHBE. And if they don't, they have huge penalties they have to pay, so they're running three crews all over the place. But might be a good idea because villages have start their budget process in the first part of the year, right?
Probably.
Schools do too. And in the towns, I know a lot of people are thinking about what they can do with this money. It may be good to have it maybe towards the end of this year. So in their planning process, people start thinking about this, because I know that there's towns thinking about buying trucks and building buildings and all this, and I know schools are thinking about that too. So it might be good to educate them before that, because their planning process started a lot ahead of time, just a little bit input.
The takeaway from my report this morning is never believe the fiscal officer when he says I need a minute overtime.
Very good. Okay. So I think we're on to our. Budget actually right now. Move these in order of this. Easiest way. Resolution A, Board of Elections, mail ballot grant.
Second.
Moved by Dave, second by Jay. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried. B is County Road Fund for CHIPS increase and rollover funds.
Second.
No, moved it, but everyone sector. Any questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried. C is Sheriff Canal Grant.
Move it.
Moved by Dave, second by Charlie. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Sign council ILS grant.
Dave, move it.
Moved by Dave, second by James. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed. Amend the budget Office of the Aging Community Connections publication.
Move it.
Second by Sam, second by Dave, discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried. F is amend budget for psychiatric expense.
Move.
Moved by Dave, second by Charlie, Sam.
This is for the
All in
17th.
favor say aye.
Aye.
This with the medication or? Still have to pay for the med.
Yeah.
That's pretty close. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried. G is SBO contracts.
Move it. Second.
Moved by Jay, second by Dave. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried. H is make appointment to the Workforce Development
So
Board.
that's on the agenda. I have 2 items on the agenda, actually. You want me to do that one first before the contract?
Why not?
Do you want me to finish up the resolutions, Brian, before we do this, just so we can knock those out quick?
Well-
Before we do Melissa's, I just want to mention to the board on resolution F, That's literally just a stopgap measure. Brandon and I don't believe that to be the number for the rest of the year.
We're just trying to not go
That's a-
negative.
That's a number to plug a current hole. That you're probably gonna see that again. We don't have any delusions that that number is gonna fix the budget for this year. That's the best stab at where we are currently. I'm also gonna need the board to, so the county clerk has a records management grant. We had a roll forward in March. The resolution has an error in it that we need to fix for her. So you'll see it in the packet that's mailed to you. You don't have it in the packet in front of you. But there'll be a resolution to rescind the March resolution and replace it with the correct. We're buying some scanners and computers. And here at the county, for items that are fixed asset level, but that we're not keeping, they're bought out of a 0.4 rather than a 0.2. So we're gonna rescind the March resolution and rebudget for her the way that we account for the fixed assets that we're going to not retain as a county asset.
So it's just the budget code.
It's just gonna be, you're gonna decrease the two that you passed in March and increase the correct two.
Okay.
So it's gonna be a rescind and replace. And you'll see that in your mail packet tomorrow. But I need action from the board on that.
Okay, can we move that?
I'll move it.
Moved by Daryl, second by Dave. Damn, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried.
Thank you. That way I don't have to interrupt most of those.
And then I'm sure we're gonna go back to another one on the Kelly Barnes. Afterwards.
Okay, so it was brought to Ag Planning that there is a vacancy on the Workforce Development Board. And that is a 3-year appointment that was forwarded to Finance for, more consideration and discussion. Gretchen, you're here. Did you want to come up to the table? And I don't know if you had anything you wanted to add about the appointment? You can come right up here. Unless you don't want to.
No,
Okay.
I just didn't know, sorry. I'm Gretchen, I know that many of you have met me before. I read the meeting for the ag, minutes, and I understand the discussion that you would like to have somebody who has a mailing address in Washington County. The person, Mark Stratton, who has formally been appointed, is a very active member of our board. He heads the youth committee. And we have several deliverables that are coming out effective September. We've got 5 goals that we've been working on. We've put together, for example, a parent participation strategy, career catalog. We've got curriculum that we're rolling out to school counselors across the Saratoga and North and Washington. And Mark is actually, fundraising, raising money to fund those. And so Mark has really been an exemplary member of our board, very committed. And so I would like to ask this committee to consider reappointing him. But also offer a compromise, because I understand that folks would like somebody who has a mailing address in Washington County to be appointed to this position, but perhaps a short-term appointment. Maybe our fiscal year goes from July 1st to June 30th. So maybe a 1-year extending, a 1-year reappointment, would meet all of our needs. I just think it would be very unfortunate for all the work that Mark has done up until now, and compete people from outside of our board to be part of the youth committee. We have youth representation on this committee, as well as many community organizations. And so I would like to offer that as a compromise. Mark also is on the board of the YMCA Saratoga, and that they also have oversight responsibilities for the Clinton schools wide as well as the country wide. So he builds mailing addresses not here, that he is actively engaged in Saratoga, Warren, Washington. And I think from being here before, many of you know the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, highly restrictive. I have board appointments that have to fall into certain categories. 51% of my board has to be business. I have to have education. I have to have Scott was approved to be appointed. He is a vocational rehabilitation appointment that's mandatory. So I have a highly restricted membership. So without going into a lot more detail. I would really appreciate more strategies, at least in the short term.
I also have, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I just had a question. I didn't think it was a mailing address. I think it was a resident that we talked about. The mailing address didn't cut it. It was the person who's gonna be resident of Washington County.
Well, we have several people that are on our board currently that are appointed in Saratoga, Warren, Washington, and then have residencies in other locations.
Sure.
And so the last appointment, for example, that person does not reside in Washington County. Or is here.
Understand that, but that was not the original intent. It was a mailing address. It's actually puts on feet on the ground in Washington County. That's why we kind of moved that list, which is why I supported it. Mr. Crooks.
I know it's hard, you know, 'cause it's like, you know, I look at our Saratoga, Warren, Washington, we're kind of in this together, we're very different. We've been having discussions lately, with the executive order about actually changing how WIO works and how we're funded. There's been some discussion about consolidating workforce boards, and we consolidating our workforce board with Capital Region. And so obviously our workforce board would not be in favor of that, but we may not. So.
Like a club.
That's awesome.
So I also have a letter that was sent to me this morning on behalf of Shelley Smith, the Executive Director at League. She said, "Good morning. I'm sorry I cannot be present this morning as you discussed the appointment of the Washington County representative to the Saratoga Warren Washington Workforce Development Board. The candidates for consideration, Andrew Cook, Superintendent of Hartford Central School, and Mark Stratton, Superintendent of the Corinth Central School, are both extremely competent and engaged in the workforce development space. Either would serve well on the board, and operative difference being that Mr. Cook's interest and presence in Washington County. Mark Stratton has been an active member of the board, serving on committees and doing valuable work since being appointed by Washington County in 2022. Andrew Cook has personal and professional ties to and knowledge of Washington County and is deeply committed to serving its people. Thank you for your thorough consideration and deliberation. The people and businesses of Washington County are in good hands, and I look forward to working together."
Right.
Oh, well, good.
So, as Melissa just noted, Shelley wasn't able to be here, but at the last meeting, discussion came up and a question was asked about what the membership makeup of the board is, how many appointments each county has, etc. So on the current board, by WIOA standards, the board is supposed to be between 23 to 30 members. There are 30 members right now, of which Saratoga County has 13 appointments. Warren County has 10 and Washington County has 7. However, having said that, to Gretchen's point, the board is meant to be all inclusive. Everybody represents everybody else. But of course, you know, there's going to be certain knowledge at the local level. So of the 7 appointments that Washington County currently has, 4 of those actually directly represent a Washington County business or entity. But there are also another 7 appointees that come from other counties. So I'm going to say Stewart's, who they're a Saratoga County appointee, but they definitely have business interest in Washington County. So there is a fair amount of crossover. So again, if you ask what the makeup looked like, that's what it is.
Any questions?
I think that it's interesting because it sounds like Mr. Stratton has volunteered since 2022. It is a volunteer position. If he's really engaged, feels strongly about workforce development, I don't think he's going to disappear because he hasn't been in Washington County. I would think he would respect the fact that counterpart in Washington County wanted to do this with that. It's really good to raise and encourage people to come into these, new faces, new ideas, new thoughts, bring new life. It's not a bad thing. And I don't think that Mr. Young would just disappear if he's that engaged with.
Well, I believe they're actually friends.
They are.
Which is very good.
They're on the school superintendent's, if you serve under the WSWG postings.
So,
Well, yeah, I guess, because I didn't think, except for the letter that Melissa read, that anybody actually mentioned the name of the second person. I was just gonna point that out.
Laura, what's your take?
Andrew Cook is there or not?
So I did have an extensive conversation with Andrew Cook, just to give you a little bit of a background. He is the longest standing school superintendent in New York State right now. He is, also basically got legislative experience in that he's chair of the Community School Organization Advocacy Committee. He's also a board member for the Rural School Association of New York State. I pointed out that Mark is currently a very active member and said that, we have absolutely no concerns about Mark's participation and abilities. And if Mr. Cook were interested in serving, there's definitely a commitment. There are committee meetings, there are subcommittee meetings, there are activities, et cetera. So he expressed himself as willing, but he was also, as was this board, very concerned that, there's absolutely no indication, that Mark Stratton has done a great job. It's simply that if the board is concerned, there is direct representation from Washington County, he's willing to do it.
Sounds like with his involvement, also seems to do with the school that he runs to be good for the youth programs and to step in. Does it seem like we're gonna have a loss? As it was the other gentleman of the Howard County who was strong in the youth division, but he's been working with you both as late. I think you would be able to fill that gap as well. Just opinion one way or the other.
resolution H is what came out of that committee.
I'll move resolution H.
So you want to move it, there's an amendment. Okay, is there a second?
I'll say.
Is there any more discussion on that? All in favor, say aye. Anyone opposed? Carried. Well, Andy Cook will be our representative. Thank you, Gretchen.
More item?
More than one, I think, but go ahead.
Just mine, the LEAP, it's the contract between Washington County, and LEAP. We had a 1-year contract with the option to renew it for another year. I just wanted to bring to this committee the fact that we have had, multiple conversations, with the executive director of LEAP, and we're trying to increase the communication and the reporting to the board, so we're a little bit more aware of the activities, and the functions of LEAP and what they do to improve the workforce. So in the contract that we'd like to renew for July 1st, we did add a paragraph saying that the contractor will conduct on-site visits with employers and organizations in Washington County and report quarterly on outreach activities, including number of sites visited, specific proactive outreach efforts conducted in local communities, and the methods of outreach to underutilized workers. So we're just trying to get more direct reports so that we're all aware of the information. I don't need any action. I don't need it to go to the board because we already have approval for the signature for 1 more year. Bring that to your attention.
Right. I was one of the ones that met with the Workforce Development Board. We really found out a lot, and there was some data came out that said our perception of what they're doing is more than we thought. Just the data came out, the Gretchen staff did some data across the counties and found out that there's a lot of stuff we're doing that we didn't know about. So increasing the communication between us and the Workforce Development Board is going to help. And Lee.
Frank, I just want to expand on that because I think it's important. The reason this is a big deal is don't forget, and again, we don't talk about this enough. So it might be in back of your file cabinet somewhere. The WIOA award is yours. This is a county award from WIOA. You subcontracted the, So ultimately, this is your award. So I commend the additional oversight, right? Because at the end of the day, this is your real award, right? So the increased reporting from LEAP is actually a big deal because you should know where that money's going because it is in essence Washington County's award. You subcontract to the delivery of the service, but it is your real award. So it's important to keep that kind of in front of your mind as well. That you should be involved in this program, how it's executed, how the money's spent, the deliverables, the measurables, right? So thank you for increasing that.
And to add to that, because you got into the financials, I mean, there is about, let's see, $118,000 that comes for the adult program services and then another $157,000 for dislocated worker program services. So there is a substantial money that, like you mentioned, it does come to the county.
And one last thought, when we started talking to Shelley, she had already been listing the issues and working with the board to figure out I don't want to say fix, how they expand their offerings, so she was in line with what we were talking about going forward, so it was good that she had done this and prepared to talk to her board about some changes.
And then
All I have.
Matt Jones is here, and I believe that's the next item we have.
So on our Ford Dam project, we've talked about in government ops and other committees, there's been a delay. We negotiated down, I think we talked about that a little bit too. All the contracts except the general contractor submitted a delay extension cost for them. So their contracts were up back in the end of December. And now the substantial completion date is, moving to September. So I myself and LaBella negotiated with them all. Most of them kind of minor because like plumbers and mechanical, they hadn't really started yet. So it was mostly just insurance extensions, bond premium extension, etc., which is able to incorporate into the contingencies in those contracts. The one big one was Roselle's site contract. And what I'd like is a change order, which is an official change order. It's not a deduct from the allowance or from the contingency. It's a change order to the contract, which would have to be signed by the chairman and approved by the full board. So I'm just going to give you the total for discussion. All the numbers. I've talked to Al and Brian about this. And then if we need to move money to cover it, for now, we will. But the number is, got wrong glasses on. $328,103.30. So that covers 9 months of equipment rental, covers their insurances on all the equipment. It's basically, it came in at close to 700,000. We went through, we won't pay all this stuff. We met multiple times, and this is the agreed upon price, the best that we thought we could do for that contract. They had all the backup, all the details, and this is what it would cost.
Yeah, so did that include all the equipment that you had rented and never had people to work for it?
So their rental equipment, the reason why it was 600 and something thousand was it was 9 months of equipment. What we agreed upon was 3 months of equipment. So even though the contract goes another 9 months, it's impossible to run that equipment. They need it for the job, which they do day in and day out, but it's impossible to run that kind of equipment for that much time. So we negotiate that down to 3 months. The bill for 3 months, even though they're contracted to be there. There's another layer to this, you know, that we can talk about. That would be, you know, how we're gonna try to recoup those funds. That's not here. That would be, you know, that's a contract, that thing I would ask for an executive session. But right now, we do need to just keep up with the, you know, the contract, so I need to move that to the full board.
Man, was that built into like our 10%?
So right now, that contract only has, for the site contract, only has 59,000 left of it. That was the over excavation, which we knew might happen in the clay. We agreed upon that at bid time. We knew that that might happen. There is contingency left in each contract. We're not done with it, so this is like what we had to do before. We're not done with the contract, so I can't say, okay, overall, we're staying here. You know, we have to submit, you know, we have to do that, to cover that contract. Because it's specific to, that contract's specific to them. I can't rob Peter to pay Paul without a contract change.
Somebody won't let him.
Yeah. Which is
For you,
which is
Al.
okay, we've met for hours, you know, with Brian and him, so my project, you know, my project financing is different than the treasurer's, you know, even though it's all the same thing. I'm like, what do you mean?
You're all good, right, man? It's just some guys that have the problem.
Well, I understand now that we met, right? I understand now that I met.
All right, so where's this coming from, Al?
So basically what we'll do is there's about 220,000 left in contingency.
Yeah,
There's an undisclosed amount of interest earned on the ICS account.
yep, I'm with
So
you.
what I'll do is I'll take out of the 328, I'll drain the contingency first. Whatever is needed above that, we'll recognize some of the interest revenue. What's nice and the part that Matt and I had to have the come to Jesus meeting on, because we come from very different worlds, right? What's nice for both Matt and the board, I only need this right now to get bills paid. What will happen, to Matt's point, as these other contracts finish and once they are final, those residual monies will go back into the contingency.
Yep.
I just can't recognize them until they're final, right? Because
Yeah.
you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
So I can't promise you that all of the 328 will be replenished, but I can promise you whatever is able to be replenished will.
So after I talked to Al this morning early, I was updating my stuff, and maybe good news to him is his budget was 10,625,000 for the project. If he was to take out of the contingency and this right now, he would boost it to 10,953,000. And with all the stuff that's done that we have paid out, because the contract expenses, which were the 5 primes, that was 8,972,000. My expenses were on top of that. That's National Grids, that's the operating, everything. So, you know, there's a whole list of stuff that isn't in those 5 contracts. And right now, and this is kind of being conservative, I'm just barely over 10 million. So if his budget still is 10 million, 10,625,000, as of right now, you may not need to move the money. We might just have to have the money discussion later, unless he wants, because that's up to him.
No, we'll move this. and recognize the-
You gotta cash flow this thing. so.
Yeah, so that's up to.
Knowing, we'll do it now, knowing that at the end of the
Yeah,
project, you may see it then.
Right.
So do we need a motion to move that?
Yes,
Move
Chairman.
it.
I need to approve that change order.
So it'll be a change order and a
Second by
budget.
Jay. Any discussion, Dan?
Yeah, back to the 328, 325,
Yes.
whatever you said. Is that change order, is that a change order that was caused due to a lot of other issues up there? And
Yes.
that we want to keep this rolling?
Yes.
When we're all said and done, we're talking how we're gonna cover this. Is there talk about getting that corrected by the deficiencies that were there?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm just wondering if we're going right out, like we're just paying this and with a change order.
You're on the right.
Well, I
you're on
just
the right
want to
street.
know that's
Yep.
still, okay, that's all.
And are we looking to go into an executive session?
If you wanna discuss that right now, to just get the, if it won't take only a few minutes.
Let's finish this one first.
Yes.
All in favor, say aye.
Uh,
Is there gonna be anything else to come before the board?
We have to move the money also. We have to make a second.
That resolution will do two things.
Okay.
It'll authorize the treasurer to amend the budget and it'll authorize the chairman to sign the change order.
And that'll be in your Friday packet if we come to a number.
we can move that. I got one public question. So you said September. As I was driving by it the other day, yesterday, in fact, I was wondering, everyone's gonna be in there. Everything all set up, inspected, done. We're gonna be operating on it before the snow
So
flies.
the legal contract and schedule that I'm holding to is August. I do know that the final cleanup, once the grading where, the sand pile is
Yep.
and the building, some of the demo, he's gonna be after the move, cause we can't do it now, but
I'm good
I'm
with that.
thinking we're gonna be operating out of the new building and so. I have to hold them to what their schedule is, you know, and as much as I can sit down and, you know, I've tried to make it real with them. This is what they're, you know,
Right, let's get a freak storm. So it's not gonna snow in September. The answer is yes. Okay, we're good.
Okay, so
I mean, you're putting me in a,
I also
That was the idea.
Just,
yeah,
would you report on the middle fall farm?
I wasn't prepared to report on the Middle Farms Farm today, but I can. I just give you an update, right now.
Just an update.
Yep. Where it looks, as you go down through there, it looks very completed yet. It's it is probably 90%, you know, we're working on finishing up the electrical, heating, plumbing, like all that stuff that's in there. The delay for the fire suppression tank, that's still the end of June, I think. And it's a little building out back, so you know, that this tank goes underneath and the pump goes in. That'll need that to commission it. But, right now, I think we're having, with all the rain this year, the epoxy floor, they won't put it on until it meets a certain moisture requirement. And usually, you know, 28 days to 35 days is good. It hasn't, 2 weeks in a row, it hasn't passed the moisture test, so right now, we just said, well, let's put it off another 2 weeks, and they're gonna actually, you know, as a means of method, no cost to us, but I said, you're gonna need to run a dehumidifier in there, you know, and shut doors, and just so we can move forward. So I'm thinking the epoxy floor is gonna be the last week of June. Which isn't terrible, because it's allowing the.
Sounds more like the middle of July.
No, so it's already, so I'm just telling you what already happened. It was supposed to be 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
You know, we're almost,
Sounds good. Thank you.
we're halfway through the delay.
I get a lot of people asking me down by the way, so I'm glad to do it.
Yeah, IT's in there working right now, getting their stuff up.
we want it to look new as long as it can. That's what it is.
Keep the people off.
Doesn't sound like you'll be able to celebrate Fourth of July.
I do believe that
Don't
we're,
let the gas.
we're hoping to have government ops down there in July,
Oh, good.
right at the building, so
Yeah.
I'm pretty confident in that one. We got the right contractors down there, they're doing everything they can, you know, to button everything up and make it perfect for us.
And then in September, you do a government absent for the end.
So the plan is September, we'll do it Middle Falls, August, we'll do,
No,
over at Burgoyne, and September, we can do Fort Ann, that would
Hot
be,
dogs.
that'd be great.
So
Right.
basically,
And then I'm gonna retire.
we're gonna go to executive session and we vote on it.
One last thing on Fort Ann, so as not to add any gray hair to Mr. Hall. The town won't be billed 60% of the $300,000. Okay, because you're only gonna be responsible for 60% of the actual costs. So I didn't want you to get nervous that, you know, you borrowed X amount of dollars and now this is
Then he can pay and you give it
on
back
top of
later.
this, so you will only be billed for actual costs of the project, so.
I know we were in good hands, Al.
I got you.
So I believe this will be contract negotiations on Monday. Or, well, we'll cover two things. First would be.
Debbie,
Yeah.
vote on that?
I want to know if we're gonna go in, it would be,
executive, you vote on that motion.
yeah, we have, yeah,
Yeah, the one.
Yes.
Change order.
329. All right, it would be
discussions regarding proposed ending for current litigation, because I actually want to discuss the decision they sent around yesterday.
Okay. So with that being said, we will be adjourning from executive session, right? We won't be taking any action. Well,
There may be one thing I want to get a sense of.
so we may be coming back. Okay, motion. to
My
go
portion of
into-
it's quick.
So moved.
I hope.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.